Hey everybody, welcome back to Conquest of Aya. And this week we're going to talk about one of my favorite characters in the Spires in the Pheromancer. Last week I wrote an article about the Biomancer over on Frontline Gaming, and I'll link that down in the description below, going over all of the biomancies and everything, all the cool tricks that you can play with the Biomancer. And I think a lot of us can agree, if we play Spires, if we played against Spires, that the Biomancer is way more popular than the Pheromancer currently. Actually, I think it's always been that way, because the Biomancer just brings so much utility in that healing, and his biomancies are just easier to use than the Pheromancies, in my opinion, on the tabletop. I mean, there's one that you just pick a unit and give them deadly blades or deadly shots. That's pretty straightforward. And there are some more tricky things you can do with the Biomancer, but he can really just be plugged and played into any Spires list, and he just is a force multiplier immediately. Like, for example, I ran him the other day with 9 force-grown drones with degenerating aura, so if they take hits when the force-grown drones die, the Biomancers heal him, and then the Biomancer is also cascading degeneration on them to do hits to anybody that's stuck in that mire that my force-grown drones causes. And the Pheromancer, he's got a lot of interesting abilities, but they're just not as straightforward to use on the battlefield. So in today's video, we're going to look at the Pheromancer and maybe look at some more interesting ways that he can be used and some more tricks that he can pull off that the Biomancer can't, and some reasons why you would take a Pheromancer instead of a Biomancer in your Spires list. Or if you really want to, you can take both. They're not that expensive. And before we hop into talking about the Pheromancer, I just want to let everybody know that I am affiliated with Frontline Gaming, and they provided me with an affiliate link that I actually include in the description of the video below. If you click on that link, if you need any Conquest models, or if you need one of the original, it's $85 on their store right now for that original Conquest starter set, which is a great price to get into the game. You get the 100 Kingdoms side and the Spires side, which is perfect for the video today that we're talking about because the Pheromancer is in that set. And while the models are a little older, the sculpts are still awesome, and it's a great way to jump into the Conquest game, or it's a great way to just get a ton of men-at-arms or force-grown drones if you need more if you play Spires or 100 Kingdoms. So if you find yourself looking for more Conquest models like that, and you want to support the channel, I would definitely appreciate it. Just click that link, and there's a bunch of Conquest models on there on the web store, and all of it is 15% off of MSRP, which is awesome. So here's our beautiful Pheromancer model. It's still the same model as it was when it first came out, and we'll take a look first at his special rule, the ability that he gets, kind of like the Men Flesh that the Biomancer gets. Pheromancer gets Pheromone Gland Burst, and I'll be honest, it's not as good as Men Flesh with that healing 2, but you can pick a unit within 8 of the Pheromancer, give them +1 March or +1 Resolve. And this isn't bad by any means. I mean, the +1 March can be a little tricky if you're playing into your opponent and they put themselves just out of what they think is the range. I mean, obviously tell your opponent, hey, I can give them +1 March to be a good opponent, but you can go a little faster. You can even use like a burnout draw event to go a little faster to add this March to it. And +1 Resolve never hurts when, if you have Resolve 1 force-grown drones, or if you have, higher Resolve 3 units and get them up to that 4, which is really reliable. And then if you choose to make the Pheromancer your Warlord, he gets Suppressed Survival Instincts, which lets any unit around 12 inches of him reroll failed Resolve tests. This is super strong because you're just rerolling all failed Resolve, and then even if you're flank charged and there are 2 rerolls, you just don't reroll, which is awesome. There is another reason you want to make the Pheromancer your Warlord, and that is your Spires overall army ability. You can make them the Under Spires, which gives you, while the Warlord's on the battlefield, all force-grown drones, onslaught drones, and Strix regiments get the Regeneration 4 draw event. So if you want to go full-on playing hordes with the force-grown drones and have some onslaught drones who are hard to keep alive, just all getting Regeneration 4, I think this would be a really fun way to play Spires. I definitely plan to test it out here soon. And the next thing the Pheromancer has is his Pheromancies. He gets all of them for free in 2.0, which is awesome. So, like the Biomancer, he's like a little Swiss Army knife on the table of you can pick one of the 6 Pheromancies he has and resolve it during his character when he's going, during the round. and you can pick kind of what fits in that situation. Now the Pheromancies are a little more restrictive than the Biomancies because a lot of them require you to draw your next command card, give it some kind of buff, but then put it at the bottom of your command stack. And the first time I read this, I was like, well, that is terrible. Whatever is at the bottom of my command stack is generally something I don't care about, something that's going to die. I mean, sometimes you're biding your time to kind of wait, but that only happens in certain rounds and not all the time. So the more I thought about it, then I thought, well, if you have multiple units of the same command card in your stack, you can double stack them after the Pheromancer. Buff one, put that command card at the bottom, and then the next card you draw is going to be the same type of unit. So, for example, if you have 2 Brute Drones, draw the Brute Drone card, the first one that you have after the Pheromancer, give it the buff that you want. That card goes to the bottom, but then you're going to draw a Brute Drone card after your opponent goes. So that Brute Drone that you activate can be the one that you just buffed. So the Pheromancer really loves multiple units of the same type in his army to make those buffs happen a little quicker. So starting right out with Siphon Strength, you draw that next command card, put it at the bottom of the stack, like we talked about. But then that regiment gets +1 to its attack characteristics and gains the Dread special rule, meaning that nobody can take the Inspire action when they're engaged with them. That's obviously really strong, and it's kind of balanced out by that card's going to the bottom of the command stack. But if you have 2 units of the same type, then that next unit going is going to go right after the Pheromancer with that +1 attack characteristic, which is awesome. Accelerated Hibernation is his next Pheromancy, and this is a little more straightforward. You draw the command card after the Pheromancer, put it at the bottom of the stack, and that regiment just gets to heal 4 wounds, right up, flat 4. This can be really, really effective if you're playing the Under Spires, where that unit's also going to get a, draw event, heal 4. So they'll count as drawing when they're at the bottom of your stack, but they'll be able to heal 8 this round, which is really awesome. So Pheromanic Drive is where we get to the first one where you don't put the card at the bottom of the stack for the Pheromancy. You pick a unit within 12 and draw the card. It acts immediately after the Pheromancer, which is really cool. So it gets to take 2 actions of the same type that round when it goes. Usually in Conquest, the only action you can take twice is a march. So a unit of marksman clones, will say, can shoot. Something in combat can clash, just dealing a ton more damage than they would typically be able to do. Now, there's a downside in decay. So if you're infantry, you get decay 3, brutes 4, and then decay 6 if you're a monster. But if you're like an abomination that you're putting this on, and you're making that abomination fight twice with those 10 attacks with flurry, I think you're okay with a decay 6. Hopefully whatever you've attacked is super dead. And this can just be a really, really big surprise damage dealer that your opponent wasn't expecting. Induced Vigor is not really a Pheromancy you're probably going to find yourself using that often, especially with the the healing that you can get, the Pheromancer can give, along with the offensive output buffs. Giving Tenacious and reroll morale test of 6 to a character stand when the Pheromancer can already give +1 resolve, and if he's your warlord, he's letting you reroll all of their resolve. And on top of that, you're putting the card at the bottom of your command stack. I just don't see this happening. I mean, if the unit's in danger and has been hurt, I would just heal it with Accelerated Hibernation instead of Induced Vigor. And the last, we have Pheromanic Compulsion. This one I would just not forget that you have up your sleeve if you have the Pheromancer on the table, because it can take Broken away from a unit that's 12 inches away from the Pheromancer. Now, maybe that card can't have gone yet, so they would still get the opportunity to rally, but maybe you don't want to use one of their actions to rally, later in the turn. You do have to put the card at the bottom of the command stack, but they lose Broken, and then they're going to get Inspired for the rest of the round. So this can be very strong if you're in combat, somebody's attacked a unit, broken them, then you can just auto unbreak them, put them at the bottom of the stack. They've already been attacked, so you're probably okay with that. Then they lose Broken, get Inspired, and then they can attack. And if you buff your Pheromancer to do 2 Pheromancies, maybe you can make them take some decay to clash twice. And the way you can do 2 Pheromancies is through the Mastery of Flesh Retinue. Just like the Biomancer, the Pheromancer gets Mastery of Flesh. Retinue can go up to 3 tiers. Tier 1 will give the regiment he's attached to regeneration +2. So it's awesome it's +2 because if you're under Spires, you're already getting that regeneration 4 draw event. So now you're at regeneration 6, which is really awesome if you have a ton of like force-grown drones or another really big squad. Or regiment, I guess. I gotta stop saying squad, that's for my 40k days. If you put him in tier 2, he's going to be able to use that Pheromantic Glam Burst twice for that +1 March or Resolve. It has to target separate units. I don't usually find this is probably going to be worth it, but it can make 2 units a little faster or a little more resilient to morale damage, which, you know, isn't terrible, and you're probably going to buy it because you want to get to tier 3, which lets him use 2 Pheromancies in a round. And then combining some of the Pheromancies is really, really interesting, kind of like we talked about with the Pheromantic Compulsion combined with the Pheromantic Drive. A single regiment can't be affected by the same Pheromancy more than once per round, but it can be affected by 2 different Pheromancies. Just keep in mind, if you're planning to pull off this combination, all of the Pheromancies require you to draw that command card. So make sure you use the one that you draw. You would have to put the Pheromancy at the bottom-ish of the stack. Then that command card that you want to do the 2 Pheromancies on needs to be right behind it and last. So it goes to the bottom of the stack after you've drawn, say, a Pheromantic Compulsion. And then if you want to Pheromantic Drive it, you draw that command card and act immediately. Admittedly, this is a pretty corner case, but if you're trying to get that, you know, double attacks off, heal, accelerated hibernation off, you can do it with some prior planning. Just like a lot of things in the Spires, your command stack needs to be pretty on point, or it can fall apart pretty quickly. Last, we'll take a look at just a couple of the mutations I really like for the Pheromancer. And one I really like is the Avatar Projection, which turns him into a brute. And it actually, I'm going to read it off so I don't get the stats that he gets. He gets +1 Clash, March, +2 attacks, Cleave 1, Impact 2. And he can no longer purchase retinue models, but he gets made into a brute, so he can go into things like brute drones, which is awesome, because a lot of the Pheromancies like really buff up the offensive output, and the brute drones already having flurry just makes him a murder machine. Now, yes, you are going to take some decay if you really buff up the offense as much as you can, but you can heal him a little bit with things like accelerated hibernation, or if you have a Biomancer around them, you can give them some splash healing from Men Flesh. And if you really want to just up the healing of the Pheromancer, you could take a Biotic Wellspring, which gives him that Biotic Renewal draw event. And if he's in under Spires, giving things like Onslaught Drones and Force-Grown Drones their own draw event of Regeneration 4, and then he's giving the Regenerate D6 wounds when he draws, that's just a ton of healing to the Pheromancer's own unit. Like the other night I played with 8 stands or 9 stands of Force-Grown Drones and the Biomancer that explode. The Pheromancer can kind of do the same thing, although his mutation slot is taken over by this Biotic Wellspring instead of the Degenerative Aura. And then a couple of the masteries that I kind of like. Attracting Pheromones could be very cool, giving the unit flank for 20 points. You can throw the Pheromancers in like Onslaught Drones just to make sure they come in because they're mediums. Probably not taking this if he's inside of, you know, Force-Grown Drones because they're already lights. But if he is in there with like the Brute Drones, maybe you would want to buy this to make sure the Brute Drones come on as early as possible. And then I always like Plague Lord. It's really cool to give Aura Death 4 to just his stand, but it's just more hits that are going to be going back onto your opponent. So hopefully this video helped some Spires players out there understand how the Pheromancer can really fit into their army and, you know, be just as effective as that Biomancer that I think a lot of us just divert to a lot of the times because of that healing. The Pheromancer can be just as strong, and especially if you make him the Warlord with that healing throughout your entire army. I know a bunch of us Spires players have a ton of Force-Grown Drones, so I'm going to definitely put them on the table and see if that healing works out and if I like it. The downside of the Pheromancer is he's definitely harder to use than the Biomancer. He's going to take some practice. The first couple times you probably use him, the card stack is going to get messed up. You're going to try and do some big brain play like I talked about by putting the 2 Pheromancies on a single unit. And It's just not quite going to work out. So that is the downside. He's not as point and click as the Biomancer, but he can really buff up some units. Admittedly, they might get hurt a little bit with the decay, but that's Spires, and you'll learn to love that. So thanks for listening, everybody, and I really appreciate the support of the channel. We got a lot of new subscribers coming in. Hopefully I'll keep the videos coming out at a good pace, and we'll get some more subscribers and keep giving some Conquest content out there.